Welcome to another episode of Voices from the Void. My name is Gideon Blackthorne. I'm the curator here at the Haunted Library. And we have another ghost story for you tonight. This one is the ghosts of the Queen Mary. They call her the most haunted ship in the world. The Queen Mary once was a glamorous ocean liner, later a warship called the Grey Ghost. She carried soldiers, celebrities, and even the dead. And today, she sits docked in Long Beach, California, but some say not everyone aboard has left. So, launched in 1936, the Queen Mary was a luxury cruise liner for the rich and famous. Winston Churchill, Clark Gable, and even royalty walked her decks. And during World War II, she was converted into a troop ship nicknamed the Grey Ghost. She carried thousands of soldiers across dangerous waters, and over the decades, the Queen Mary saw hundreds of deaths from accidents, drownings, and even wartime collisions. Since retiring in 1967, she's been a hotel and tourist attraction, but the guests report far more than history lingering in her halls. Some of the stories that have come from the Queen Mary. There was a drowning in the first-class pool. One of the most famous spirits is said to be a little girl named Jackie, who is said to have drowned in the pool. Visitors hear the sound of splashing water, even though the pool has been empty for decades. Paranormal teams have recorded EVPs of a young voice saying, voice of little Jackie looking for her mother. And some guests even claim to see small wet footprints leading away from the pool. The other story is the engine room death. It is the most haunted spot in the entire ship. Door 13 is the engine room. Now, during a routine drill in 1960, a crewman was crushed to death by a watertight door. And since then, visitors and staff reported seeing a man in greasy overalls wandering the area. Sometimes he disappears into the door itself. And the wartime spirits also add to it. When serving as a troop ship, the Queen Mary collided with her escort vessel, the HMS Goroka, slicing it in half and killing nearly 300 aboard. Survivors swore they saw faces screaming from the waves as Queen Mary sailed on. Today, guests in the bow area report hearing the sounds of rushing water and screams as if the collision is still replaying. Now, this ship has so much activity that even hardened paranormal investigators call it overwhelming. Shadow figures roam the halls, phantom footsteps echo on the decks, and cold spots freeze visitors where no room vents exist. Some believe the Queen Mary is not just haunted, but it has become a spirit vessel, trapping the souls of all who have died aboard. Now, the Queen Mary once carried kings and soldiers and movie stars, but today her guest list is very different. Spirits of children, sailors, and strangers lost at sea still walk her decks. Would you spend a night in one of her cabins, knowing you may not sleep alone? Follow Voices from the Void for more chilling true stories of haunted places, because history doesn't fade, it lingers. Until next time. Welcome to another episode of Voices from the Void. Tonight we're exploring ghost stories from St. Augustine, and tonight's story is called The Spirits of the Lighthouse Sisters. Now, before we begin, you should know some things about where this story takes place. St. Augustine, Florida is one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in the United States. It was founded in 1565, and its city is soaked with centuries of war, piracy, plague, colonial conquest, Spanish forts, cobblestone streets, unmarked graves, ancient cemeteries that whisper of lives long gone, but not forgotten. And tonight we're visiting one of the most haunted cities in America, and it's a place where the veil feels thin. It's where history rests quietly, and tonight we step inside of one of its most chilling stories. So if you listen closely on a quiet night near St. Augustine's Lighthouse, you might hear the echo of three little girls' laughter, long after the sun has set and long after they were buried. In the late 1800s, construction was underway at the St. Augustine Lighthouse. The project was overseen by Hezekiah Pitty, whose children often played near the work site. Among them, there were three young girls, Eliza, Mary, and a third child whose name was lost to time. Now, on a summer afternoon in 1873, the girls were riding in a cart meant for hauling supplies up from the river, and it was their favorite game, but this time something went wrong. The cart broke loose, rolled down the tracks fast, and crashed into the bay. Now the girls were trapped, and by the time help arrived, it was too late. They had drowned. Now a joyful game turned tragic in an instant. Now their loss devastated the community, but the lighthouse was completed, but some believe the children never left. Now since then, dozens of reports have poured in. Paranormal investigators, tourists, and even employees have encountered small footsteps racing towards the tower late at night. Laughter and whispers when no children were present. And a girl in a blue velvet dress seen staring from the lighthouse window. Phantom touches like a child tugging on your hand or shirt. Cold spots near the base of the tower or on the upper landings. And in one case, a night guard followed a child's cry up the spiral staircase for only the crying to stop and a heavy lighthouse door slamming shut behind them, even though no one else was inside the building. Now, in the Lighthouse Museum sits a doll donated years ago, and visitors say the doll moves. Staff say they've found it in different positions, even though it's behind the locked glass case. Some say it smiles slightly more or less, depending on the time of day. But when ghost hunters brought EVPs to the tower, they caught a voice whispering. So next time you're in St. Augustine, visit the lighthouse, climb the spiral staircase, and listen. You just might hear the giggles echo through the halls. But if you feel a tiny hand slip into yours, don't look down. Just keep walking. Tonight's story is The Haunting of the Biltmore Hotel. And welcome to another episode of Voices from the Void. My name is Gideon Blackthorne. Now, beneath the golden lights of Coral Gables stands a monument of glamour, tragedy, and restless spirits, the legendary Biltmore Hotel. Now, once the height of 1920s luxury, its marble halls and grand tower have seen more than champagne toasts and laughter. Tonight, we step beyond the velvet curtains to uncover the shadows that still linger inside of Florida's most elegant haunt. Now, when it opened in 1926, the Biltmore was the pride of Coral Gables, host to jazz legends, movie stars, and the elite of the Roaring Twenties. Its Mediterranean revival design rose like a castle from the subtropical landscape and crowned by a 315-foot tower visible for miles. But the glamour gave way to darkness, and during World War II, the hotel was converted into a military hospital. Hallways that once echoed with music now rang with the groans of wounded soldiers. And now, even after the war, when the hotel sat abandoned for decades, locals whispered that something or someone still lingered inside. When it reopened in the 1980s, the stories began in earnest. Housekeepers spoke of doors slamming on their own, lights flickering in empty corridors, and the faint sound of big band music drifting from deserted ballrooms. Now, among the hotel's most famous ghosts, is one named Thomas Fatty Walsh. He was a mobster gunned down on the 13th floor suite in 1929. Now, witnesses claim that his spirit never left. Guests report the scent of cigar smoke wafting through the air even in non-smoking rooms. Bartenders have heard laughter and clinking glasses when the bar is closed. And on one night, a security guard riding the elevator alone watched in horror as the floor indicator stopped at 13, though no button was pressed and the doors slid open to reveal an empty hallway. The faint outline of a man in a suit and a fedora stood at the far end, watching silently before fading into the wall. There is also another story of a young girl seen peering from a high window above the lobby. Guests report seeing her face pressed to the glass, her small hand waving, only for her to vanish the moment anyone calls out. Someone say she was the daughter of a soldier who died when the hotel was a hospital, doomed to wait for her father's return. Now, late at night, footsteps echo across the ballroom floor, chandeliers sway as if dancers glide beneath them, unseen but still keeping time with a ghostly orchestra. Now, the Biltmore remains a beacon of beauty by day and a temple of whispers by night. Now, whether the spirits of gangsters, soldiers, or lost children truly walk its halls, or it's merely the echoes of its tumultuous past, one thing is certain: the walls remember. Now, would you dare stay the night on the 13th floor? Thanks for wandering the library with me. Until next time on Voices from the Void, may your nights be a little spookier and your bookshelves a little more mysterious.